Beginning again with the aiming of the mind. As for the qualities of which you may know, these qualities lead to dispassion, not to passion, to being unfettered, not to being fettered, to shedding, not to accumulating, to modesty, not to self-aggrandizement, to contentment, not to discontent, to seclusion, not to entanglement, to aroused persistence, not to laziness, to being unburdensome, not to being burdensome. You may categorically hold this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teacher's instruction. As we continue to live into the question of how to not only orient the mind, but keep reorienting the mind towards understanding, towards release, towards dispassion, towards aroused energy that is also not fettered, we're going to go further into paticca samuppāda, into dependent origination. And I'd like to, in the sense of continuing to unfold what it is generally, a little bit each time, remind us that this is a description of a process that is both simultaneous, everything happening at once, like it's all here. The ignorance is here now, the consciousness is here now, the thirst or hunger is here now, the suffering is here now, all at once. And it also is a rolling forward of a process that can be understood profitably as sequential. So it's both all at once and it unfolds over time. And if nothing else, this is possible because it's all fabricated. Paticca samuppāda is also a construction, it's a fabrication. It's a schema, it's a concept laid on top of actuality. So if we just remember that the impermanent and selfless rolling on of phenomena as experienced by the being, the human being in our case, has no labels, it has no boxes, it has no fixed entities in it. It's just process. Because of that, all we can really do is touch into ways of understanding that can help this process that we're engaged in, what we might call my life, to be without harm and to diminish or even perhaps eradicate suffering that's based on clinging and grasping. We can't eradicate having a body. There's going to be physical pain. There's going to be death. There's going to be aging. That's a given. It's all about how we meet the experience. And the skillfulness of dependent origination is that it provides such a subtle and useful handle into the lived experience. And this is based on, of course, the wisdom of Gautama. And Gautama had this insight on the eve of his enlightenment. This is like the key Dhamma teaching after he saw all the past lives and had all these powers and all that stuff. Whatever you think of all that, it comes back to looking at the phenomenal experience, the lived experience. It's not spoken of as this exists or even this is true. It's the experience, right? So that's what we're talking about with dependent origination. Indeed, the entire Dhamma. It's all constructed and it's all intended as a skillful way of meeting the human experience towards this good, towards this this shedding, towards this harmlessness and kindness and compassion, and towards the letting go. So as we're exploring it, keep checking. Keep checking for yourself. Is there, is there a way that as I hear this, I can touch what's true in experience and maybe see something I didn't see before and be satisfied with that? We don't have to leave some session fully awakened or having had a huge insight or something like that. But where can something in this resonate and then be applied, right? That's the whole thrust of this series, is we're applying it to our work lives, our relational lives at home, and specifically within an organization where the doing can create such a pressure and a momentum within the system we're describing with dependent origination, where the ignorance is really well established and the craving, the hunger is well established, the clinging is solid, because we've got all the agitating, vibrating tendencies of the mind are revved up. And then when we go to speak, when we go to act with the body, the clutch comes off and the vehicle shoots forward. Well, then there's karma. That's action, karma. And action has results. So can we be skillful? And perhaps the doorway in might be exactly some part of this teaching or remembering of kind of the whole of it as you see fit. So to touch back to where we've been so far, we're beginning by looking at ignorance, avijja, and this is that blind not knowing. And out of that, we're not aware it's happening, is this rushing forward of conditioned tendencies, sankharas, avijja paccaya sankhara, this rushing forward of conditioned tendencies. We're in it, we believe it, we are it, already. And depending on those rushing forward of conditioned tendencies, that sort of energy of constructing, consciousness arises. That's you might say, the conditions in that instant, not the next instant, in that instant for the arising of consciousness, vijnana, sankhara paccaya vijnana. So this cognizing of the world is now the conditions for what is cognized. Something is cognized, and basically it's nama rupa, it's name and form, mind and matter. Okay, well, there's the you might say the seed of the phenomenal experience of materiality. In other words, the sense of solidity and so on and so forth. Heat and cold are the subjective experiences, but the rupa, the form, is in this dynamic system of consciousness coming forward, and the form itself will, as you'll see, be manifesting tendencies based on consciousness. The form itself will be clinging. The form itself will be clung to. And as will all of the feelings and perceptions where we place our attention, the nama, the mind. So you have the mind and matter, body, mind, nama, rupa, as a complex. And that complex, just like consciousness, is just tumbling forward. There's no statement of this exists. It's really important because we so much can fall into, well, this doesn't make sense because of this, and you try and map it over to a materialistic mindset without even knowing it. So this, based on this consciousness rushing forward, there's the experiencing of mind and matter, of body-mind, and then within that, that becomes the basis after vijnana paccaya namarupa, depending on consciousness, arises the body-mind, the experiencing of body-mind. There's the specifics in the body-mind, the specific doorways of the senses, salayatana. So namarupa paccaya salayatana, depending upon the name and form, the manifesting of body-mind. Well, how do you experience name and form? How do you experience right now the world of this being? Right? There's the touching, let's say touching on the chair, or there's this hearing of sound. There's the seeing. Sometimes you might notice smell or taste, much less so. There's the body sense. There's the mind sense. These 6 sense doors. Salayatana. 6 sense spaces. And so the world begin to see the world in its specifics. Auditory, visual, tactile, so on. That's what's happening right now. That's how you're hearing this talk. The salayatana, the sense door of hearing. And then, of course, all of the processes that go on, and then the touching of this language into the mind to create a secondary sense door, not secondary in importance, but just the follow-on of mind. And you're hearing these thoughts and maybe thinking about them and so on and so forth right now. And where we left it last week is salayatana paccaya passo. So passa is contact, touch. And this touch, this contact, is the coming together of that which is sensed, that which is sensitive, and consciousness. So the example that's most often given in the discourses, because it's so concrete and so easy to, get at a initial level, is a visible object, eye, sensitive eye, a working eye, and consciousness. And that has some problems if you only go there, because you then, again, you materialize the world. You say, okay, I see that object, that's the external base. I have the eye, that's the internal base. And then consciousness arises, I can see. Makes a great deal of sense to science. But there's no assertion of what exists or not. It's phenomenal experience. You're having that experience now of seeing and hearing and thinking and feeling the body. Tumbling forward right now. Or you could just say eternally here and not here. And we spoke briefly, and we will revisit this, about the import of consciousness arising both from the, you might say, internally, dependent upon sankharas, depending upon these formations, all past volitional actions and thoughts and so on, and consciousness arises in this moment. And in each moment, you might say, in the world, in what is seen and heard and cognized in the world, consciousness arising dependent upon that particular object. So here you have consciousness, this experiencing happening of, you might say, knowing the world, not implying intelligence, just the cognizing fact. And it's right at this just astonishingly tender intersection of all that's been conditioned, all that we've seen, all that we've done, all our presuppositions, our memories, our history, our emotions, our knowledge, just whatever. And then what is coming in through the senses that's indexing into that in that particular way. And here we are, right? So relationally, in each moment of contact, consciousness is arising dependent upon the seen, heard, cognized, and so on. So let's say I see you. That's going into the perception of you. And if the feelings arise and so on, and it's beginning to feel like this. And that touches my memories. Oh, you look like this. Or, oh, when I see you, I think of this. Or, oh, we have to get all this work done. And I need you to help me. And, whatever constructs you bring forward that are, being, shall we say, the basis for contact, the external base for contact. So the mind, the experiencing arises around that. So relationally, it's very important to see that. And I think we'll be able to get more of a sense of that later. So now we've come to, you might say, the fertile soil of becoming into suffering. We had to get there at some point. We are there. And I'm going to give it to you in Pāli first, just in case that touches you in some way. Pasa pachaya vedana. Depending upon contact, arise feelings. Simple enough. No contact, no feelings. Right? Make sense? No contact, no feelings. No contact visually, you won't see me. No actual external and internal base. No contact orally, you won't hear me. No contact with your own thoughts, no thought. I think that's just a coma. But anyway, so on and on with, all of the sense bases, moment by moment, contact. Depending upon contact, arises feeling. Now, specifically, very specifically, the Buddha is talking about pleasant feeling, unpleasant, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So what's really important there is we're not just talking about bodily feeling. We're not just talking about one sense door over another. All the sense doors constantly in this incredibly sensitive organism, constantly being stimulated. Tremendous sensitivity of the eye, tremendous sensitivity of the ear, of the mind, of the body, and so on. And dependent upon each micro contact, consciousness will arise as the ripening dictates. Now, there's the situation where basically we're talking about something that sounds like it's a serial process. One thing follows another, very linear. There's one thing, then one thing, then one thing. When we know that the body, mind, all the sensations, the brain is a parallel processing organism. Lots of stuff coming in at once, being integrated and so on. But the point is not that consciousness arises, let's say, with just that object in a mechanical sense. But consciousness, I would suggest, arises as the aggregate based upon all of these tendencies we're talking about, all the sankharas and the contact with salayatana, with the sense spaces, all the constructions and so on. And now the arising of consciousness is associated with the sense door. What the Buddha talks about is it's as the way a fire burning is reckoned by its fuel. So consciousness is reckoned by its sense door. So the same way you have a forest fire, a brush fire, a garbage fire, a chemical fire. You have eye fire, or shall I say eye consciousness, tongue consciousness, nose consciousness, body consciousness, ear consciousness, mind consciousness, and so on. So in that sense, there's not this continuity of consciousness that's going on that that we think we feel, we think that this is how things are. Oh, there's just me constantly knowing. We weave that, we make that. That's a fabrication. It's a fabrication. It's a fabrication of the organism to achieve a certain functionality, and you might say mental or even emotional homeostasis, stability. I am in this sea of impermanence. I can find enough of my stability in this continuity of self. We'll get to that later, but it's really important that in terms of our understanding of how we make the world, that this is exactly what we're doing. We're doing it all the time. We're doing it right now, of course. We're doing it when we're trying to work, and the mind is vibrating with its work, or vibrating at home, let's say, with its emotions or something. And in that vibrating, we don't see this at all. It is me and my emotions and so on. Well, depending upon contact arise feelings. That's the lesson here. Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And it was a key teaching, this Vedana, these feelings, a key teaching of the Buddha. Basically, he says, we are dragged around. We are led by the nose through life by these feelings. Does that feel like a concept? Pleasant, unpleasant, neither. What does the mind do? It's just that quality, whether it's eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Led around, guided, dragged through the world by the Vedana, the feelings. This is a practice. A practice of observing the body, mind being led around by Vedana. You're on your meditation cushion, being a good little girl or boy. Well, I think I'll change positions. My knee is a little sore. Vedana. You're out in the world. You see a friend. Oh, hey, how you doing? Vedana. Oh, that was pleasant. No moral judgment here. Understand, it's all cause and effect. Just trying to understand the phenomenal experience of being sentient, and especially as it gets more complex and kind of screwed up in certain ways, human. Vedana. So the Buddha goes off from time to time, you may or may not know this, he goes off from time to time to basically get away from everybody and just meditate on his own. He goes off into the woods, as they say in the suttas, for the day's abiding. And on one such occasion, he comes back. I think of it, I'm sorry, but I think of it as him coming back to the campsite. Maybe he comes back to a real monastery, but it feels like a campsite. Like, these guys are always moving around. I don't really know what he came back to, so I'm going to live with my little fantasy here. He comes back into the camp. There's a bunch of monks around. He said, while I was meditating, I entered that abiding that I entered on the eve of my awakening, on the night of my awakening. And I have determined that there is no, that feeling, Vedana, is always present. That's subtle, at least to me, because I have such respect for a mind that would get clear enough to see through the totality of the fabricating process of being human to get there and still see Vedana. So going over to the teaching on, for example, the most subtle, concentrated meditation of jhana, the most refined is the realm or the experience of neither perception nor non-perception. And since perception or sanya and Vedana arise together, that's where we're talking about, right there. Vedana sanya, feeling, perception. So this is something that is always present, and anytime you are wanting to check out, where is my motivation? How am I being pulled? Where can I let awareness rest even for a minute? Mindfulness will support you in bringing forward this focal point of Vedana. And just ask, pleasant, unpleasant, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. If you have enough time, like while someone is sort of pausing while they're speaking to you, or you're walking across the room to go to a meeting or whatever, is there this inclination from the Vedana, from the feeling? Am I really wanting the pleasant? Am I really wanting to get rid of the unpleasant? Am I spacing out in the neutral, in the neither pleasant nor unpleasant? Practice, it's a practice. Every contact will be the source, the yield the Vedana. Pasa pachaya Vedana. Dependent upon contact arises Vedana. Well, how does there not arise Vedana? Now, of course, we're talking about Vedana that's dependent upon this consciousness that came up out of ignorance. We're talking about the feeling arising out of this momentum of ignorance. It's a possibility of cessation of ignorance. We can certainly have the feelings arising out of a consciousness that comes with, believing in the self and so on, but it's a loving, compassionate self. That's definitely skillful stuff and conditions the mind towards release. But if we want to talk about the full release of the mind in loving kindness, the full release of the mind in compassion, the liberation of the heart, this too is, coming out of an extraordinary and ongoing diligence of your path. It's not a trivial thing, because the conditioning tends to. Continue to roll forward. Okay. Here's the Buddha's bombshell. Actually, there's a couple of them in this part of the teaching. Vedana pachaya tanha. Dependent upon feeling arises thirst, hunger. Longing, wanting, urging. Oh, I want to experience that pleasure. I want to get away from that pain, that discomfort. I want to be away from my confusion. Even if I move towards the stability of an extremely painful relationship or situation. I'm still pulled by hunger. I want, I urge, I long to get out of this incredibly, almost ridiculous sensitivity. I can't stand it. Let me out. Pulling away from any particular pasa, any particular contact, pulling away from life. That vibhava tanha, that hunger to get out. The hunger to stabilize. Oh, pleasure. Holding on to the pleasure. This is okay. I could hang out here. Delusion, I don't mind. I can be happy right now. In my ignorance, in my down the road, next moment, maybe not, But right now, hey, so there's a checking out, yeah? Vedana pachaya tanha. Depending upon feelings, arise craving. And this craving is the energy of the system. It's like the battery. You got positive and negative stuff going on. You got the voltage in between, and it sends its current through the system, and the system is energized, and all those circuits come into play, and all of your serial and parallel processing just goes to town. Tanha. Thirst, hunger, longing to exist, to get stable, longing just for pleasure of the organism, yeah? And feeling the force of that. So I want to bring us back and orient us where we are in this whole process of understanding phenomenal experience. Avijja, ignorance. There's this rushing forward, and I'm going to skip some of the in-between stuff so you can just get a sense of the overall flow of it. You've got this unknowing happening as there's the rushing forward, and consciousness is arising, and it's separating out into all these sense spaces, and then there's this contact with the world, and these feelings arise, and thirsting, relational thirsting, pure sensory thirsting. It's all thirsting, driving us forward, pushing, blindly, avijja, not knowing. So, from a practice standpoint, I'm leading us towards a contemplation now. From a practice standpoint, each moment of contact is the nutriment, the food for this arising of feeling pleasant and unpleasant and thirst. So no longer is there just a description of the bare, shall we say, mechanics of the touch. Now we're beginning to move into the lived experience of hunger and the motivating of the organism that's going to feed back and keep this process going. How can that be experienced with each touch? Look for the touches internally, you might say, the mind, the mental touches, the physical touches. Look for the relational touches, pasa, contact, touch. And see if you can locate the Vedana, the feeling, the pleasant, unpleasant. It's quite subtle to locate the neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Go for it. But don't stop there. See if you can feel in your belly or your throat or your heart the urging of tanha, of thirst, hunger. The organism in its environment, rolling forward in whatever way, circumstances, with another person, without another person, with a group of people, trying to accomplish something, not trying to accomplish something, eating, defecating, walking, looking at a garden, harming someone, being incredibly beautiful and kind and generous, circumstances, and we act in those circumstances. But the sensitivity is absolutely unending. It's built into this organism through all of that. All of the touches, the pasa of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, all the touches of this mind, this poor mind that doesn't know what to do with its own power, this rushing forward. And with each contact, there's the feeling that arises associated with that. And then the tanha, the thirst, going this way, going that way, being led around by the Vedana, by the feeling, because of this thirst, being driven by this thirst. Okay. Now we come to what many would say is the big one. So you get a sense of how Vedana is so powerful, right? The tanha is like, here's where the Buddha puts his finger, like holding the bow, you know? It's like, okay, you hold your finger there and I'll tie the little thing. This is the finger on the knot of the bow. This is it. And that is, depending upon this hunger, this energy of urging, arises clinging, grasping, holding on to it. Gotta hold on to get the good, to feed this hunger. Gotta hold on for the sensory pleasure. Gotta grab it. Grab the sense, grab the world, grab the thought, grab what I can of the situation that I've constructed, hold it, and sustain it out of that flux that is just an empty flux of unfolding. We freeze the world and we sustain it. We give fuel to the rest of the processes of self-making, as you'll see. Tanha, paccaya, upadana. Depending upon this thirsting, arises clinging, craving. Arises grasping. My mistake. Depending upon this thirsting, this craving, arises grasping, clinging, adhering, holding. This is not me holding, guys. This is holding. It happens. This is where we get the clinging aggregates, the whole body, mind, the whole psychophysical totality is doing the grasping, the holding. Upadana, clinging. Each thought, each eye touch, each ear touch. How can I get the good? How can I avoid the bad? How can I stabilize? How can I control the world? Well, I can't control the world unless I can hold on to it and stabilize it enough to control it. Controlling just meaning get me the good, get rid of the bad, no matter how deluded I am and what I think bad or good are, whatever I like and don't like, I'm not even conscious of that. But the organism is functioning like that to make that happen. Upadana, grasping. Clinging. With each contact, at each sense door, right? Where is consciousness arising? Where is it clinging? And in the absence of the hunger, without that energy of longing, of thirst, there's no conditions for the grasping to happen. There's no energy there. You don't have the voltage to close the circuit, to close that little robot arm of grasping. Battery, worn out, little robot arm stops grasping. Plunk, relaxed. Just the flow of circumstances. And the natural functioning of whatever remains of loving kindness, compassion. All of the urging is gone out of the way. Nothing selfish, because there's no self to be selfish with. The natural response to the world of compassion, of joy. In the absence of the tanha, the thirst, no grasping. But, of course, the catch is the other way. When there is this thirsting present, that clinging is the conditioned response, the response and the flow, the arising of it dependent upon conditions. Not me, not self, just conditions, folks. It's not personal. The avidya, the ignorance, is still kind of back there. We don't know this is happening. We think it's all permanent. We think it's all self. We think we can get happy if we hold on to the right thing long enough. And so we try to reach into the body of the system and freeze this particular moment, this particular experience, this particular sensation. That freezing driven by this thirst for becoming, a thirst for safety and getting out of this sensitivity, a thirst for pleasure, sensual pleasure. That's, well known by evolutionists, right? Evolutionary scientists. That's how we, the organism is responding to the environment in these mechanical ways, really, eh? Red berry, good. Red berry, kill me. Okay, that gene didn't survive. Red berry, good. Red berry, survive. Ah, good. Social contact, I tell my kids, red berry, good, red berry, bad, which is which, my kids survive. So through social contact, there's survival of that genome, you might say, of that being, of that species. No social contact, no survival. Everybody dies from the first red berry. But we learn. But we also learn all of our behaviors and all of our other stuff with contact, the Vedana that comes with contact. Oh, I love my parents. They make me feel good. So we stay together. The parents are saying, oh, I love my kids. It feels good. So we stay together. Thirst for pleasure is driving familial bonding. And from the familial bonding, we have all of the wholesome things that come of it: love, compassion, care for others, learning how others feel because we're so close to them in safety. We can learn how to be with others in a certain way. And of course, the learning that also happens of dysfunctional patterns that have been established how many generations ago? Sankara, Pachaya, Vijnana, depending upon the whole history of fabricating processes, consciousness arises. Welcome to your family history. And in this moment, that manifests with contact, thirsting, clinging. You did this to me. You're evil. Clinging. Oh, you will be my source of safety. You're the place I can go to. Clinging. Freezing of the world. It's not immoral. It's just a process, folks. It's like saying meteorite hits. There's a big crater. Is that crater immoral? It's a stupid crater. It's like, the meteorite hit the earth and went boom. That's what we're like. And when we bring practice forward, when we bring volitional action to impact this system, we begin to talk about the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is an influence towards the unfettering, the unbinding of the system. And this upadana, this clinging, is a key factor. Some would say the key factor, but I don't think we need to do that, in the binding. The energy that drives the continuous binding and rebinding. Tanha. Tanha pacaya upadana. So we have the craving and clinging that's driving the system forward, the grasping moment by moment, trying to get stable, trying to get the good, get rid of the bad. Can't relax in it. Can't see clearly because we can't relax. When mind does become more relaxed, already the system begins to unbind. You don't have to do fancy stuff. You don't even have to have Buddha Dhamma to begin the process. But that clinging to be recognized, one notices the impact on the nama rupa, the body-mind experience. One becomes more sensitive over time and so notices the impact on the body-mind of the grasping. You become more sensitive as you practice, as you reflect, as you live a moral life. Without the morality, you will never be sensitive enough. But as you become more sensitive, you get grasping hurts, clinging, upadana hurts, even the pleasant clinging. But let's, don't push yourself beyond where you're comfortable. If you want to just look at the unpleasant clinging, totally good. That's a good start. So meditation is this combination of calming down, being aware in the moment of experience. And there can be a settling to say, there's the clinging, and letting go. Reconditioning, you might say, the tendency to cling towards a tendency to let go, to shed, to not accumulate. And you can do this anytime. You can do it when you're active in your life, but when you do formal meditation, insight dialogue or individual meditation, then you bring the meditative qualities to know the nature of the clinging and to know the nature, to begin to sense the pain of clinging and to feel the release, the wholesomeness of non-clinging, of renunciation, you might say. Renunciation doesn't involve robes in this case. This is the renunciation of all of that fabricating process. That's not where I'm going. That's not where I'm headed. That's not the orientation of my life. So there's a teaching that the Buddha offers, and it's actually one of those teachings in the discourses that is like a boilerplate. It's a set of phrases that you see in a lot of discourses. So I'll just read you this particular one. Here, a bhikkhu has heard that nothing is worth adhering to. That's the upadana, the adhering, the clinging. Nothing is worth clinging to. When a bhikkhu has heard that nothing is worth adhering to, he or she directly knows everything. 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 Having directly known everything, he fully understands everything. Having fully understood everything, and now we go to the Vedana. So listen to how important this is, the feeling. Whatever feeling he feels, whether pleasant or painful or neither painful nor pleasant, he abides contemplating impermanence in those feelings. It's all that's there is the impermanence. Contemplating fading away. Contemplating cessation. Contemplating relinquishment. Contemplating thus, he does not cling to anything in the world. When he does not cling, he is not agitated. He personally attains nibbana, or cooling. Nibbana is the cooling, a putting out of the fire. He understands birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming into any state of being. Simple, simple teaching. Simple teaching. A bhikkhu has heard that nothing is worth adhering to. When he's heard that, he knows that. He directly knowing it, he understands everything, fully understood whatever he feels, doesn't cling to, no agitation, fading, cessation, nibbana. This is the discourse, the brief discourse on the destruction of craving. Poof. Just put it right in the little kernel right there. Upadana. Clinging. So, depending on how far back in the dependent origination you want to go, you got the 6 sense bases. Depending upon that arises contact, arises feeling, and of course perception. So the world is beginning to really affect us. We're looking at that part of experience, that slice of experience. The world affecting us, depending upon the feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. There is thirsting. So there's an energy coming up into experience now. And depending upon this energy of thirsting, clinging, grasping, sustaining something out of that flow. And in the next talk, we'll look at the primary thing that is sustained. I'm going to give you a preview just so you can know where it's going, but stay with this. Don't go too far forward. The primary thing we cling to is becoming, selfing, me. So there's all that energy. Right now, in your practice this week, in your work life, your personal life, your formal practice, you're invited to touch into the pasa, the contact, really get the sense of all these contacts and how that yields Vedana, feeling pleasant and unpleasant. See if there's a being pulled around. And you can do this in a flash, well, especially once you get good at it. Poof, it is there. You will see it. And in your silent practice, you can really, get refined about, wow, that's happening that's really subtle. It's happening all the time. Oh my God, this is scary. I'll never get out. I don't like Buddhism. This sucks, kind of thing. But in the absence, of course, of this ignorance, this whole process isn't unfolding like this. So out of that Vedana and that thirsting, see if you see the grasping. You could even just ask yourself, okay, what am I clinging to now? You don't even have to wonder, is there clinging? You can pretty much count on it. But, wow, I just looked at it and it vanished. No clinging. The thirst just seems to have, with the mindfulness, dissipated. That's cool. I like that. And thirst dissipates. The energy of the push of the system diminishes, while the energy, if you might say, of diligence and awareness remains strong. The strength of that luminosity of mind is unfolding now without the obscuring factors, all the hatred and confusion and greed and so on. It comes out of the clinging. Remember, this is not without effect. There's moral results of the actions that we take. The process itself is, you might say, amoral. In some sense, it's just unfolding. But what we, do, you might say, in the thrall of it, is definitely a big deal. And we can be free. It's a very clear teaching. Very clear. In the absence of clinging, we're in good shape. Thank you. I think we're at the end, so I'll give us a traditional reading and a bell, and we'll be done. As for the qualities, of which you may know, these qualities lead to dispassion, not to passion, to being unfettered, not to being fettered, to shedding, not to accumulating, to modesty, not to self-aggrandizement, to contentment, not discontent, to seclusion, not to entanglement, to aroused persistence, not to laziness, to being burdensome, not to being burdensome. You may categorically hold, this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teacher's instruction. Thank you, friends. Wishing you ease.